my learnings with working with David Cannon as well has been around the way that business is using technology. And I did read a very interesting statistic, and obviously statistics are, always need a little bit of a pinch of salt, but something like 40% of technologists are actually working in the business and no longer in the traditional IT function. And the way that business is viewing and using technology is changing massively. And the reason that we actually started this was I had a conversation with Ken some weeks ago, and I posed this question to him, and out of that came, why don't we do a quick little webinar on this? So with that, I'm going to ask Ken, if you might do a bit of an introduction. I will also ask David to do a brief introduction as well at some point. But starting with Ken, tell us a little bit about your journey as a CIO and what that's been like for you.
Thanks, Mark. So I'm going to try and keep my resume as short as possible so we can get to the topic at hand. But I've been in the IT industry for over 45 years now. Started off working for IBM for 10 years, moved to the customer side of the desk. I was a CIO for over 20 years, in 5 different major corporates in South Africa. I was then appointed to run a stock exchange listed software company. I then ran my own business for 10 years, doing consulting and mentoring and coaching before being asked to run a business in the United States. And currently I'm running 2 other software companies, both one based out of South Florida in the USA, and one based out of Atlanta in Georgia. So it's a full life. I've enjoyed every moment of it. I want to continue to enjoy every moment of it, and been through a lot of learnings. And as we spoke about just beforehand, my first role as a CIO was in the late 80s, and then it was about make sure my systems are up. Do I have a pension system? Do I have a financial system? Do I have a customer database, etc.? And it really was about and it was long-term planning. It was people would ask for a system, and you go, sure, I can give that to you in 6 months. I can give that to you in 12 months. The sense of urgency was we were doing it as quick as we could, but the urgency of immediate turnaround didn't exist. Then you move to the whole online kind of era, moving through that. And now, of course, everybody's an IT expert. Okay, it is no longer the CIO that's the expert. Everybody's an expert. Whether you're talking to the CFO, the CEO, the CMO, the CPO, they are all IT experts. And I'm not taking the mickey out of them. It's a fact. They are not. I used the example of Y2K. I was at an organization where I got away with murder because nobody understood what I was doing. And you can't do that anymore. You will get questioned in a boardroom if you're the CIO on your technology decisions, and they sometimes will know more than you do. So the role of the CIO, and I question terminology whether it should be called CIO, is very, very difficult at the moment. And if people don't adapt to what's happening in the world, that they are going to struggle in the role. And I still believe the role's needed. Okay, whether we need to call it something different is not there. But so that's my background. I love being a CIO. I think the biggest wake-up call before I hand over to David, and it's very relevant in the context of this conversation. My biggest and most enjoyable CIO role was at a very large government organization. And I remember walking in on day one and saying to the equivalent of the CEO, what's my mandate? What is it you want me to do? And he gave me 3 business objectives. He said, I want you to increase revenue by using technology because I can't do it manually anymore. I want you to modernize this part of the business and make it more automated, more functional, more efficient, etc. And I want you, and there was a third element which was related to internal business issues. There was nothing about technology in that. He asked me to do 3 business things. That was a wake-up call for me. Major wake-up call. He didn't say, I want you to ensure availability, bring your IT costs, get the network going. No, he gave me 3 business objectives and said, that's what I want you to fix. Big wake-up call. And I think that is where we are going. Not where we're going, it's where we are. But Dave.
Yeah, so Ken and I worked together for a little bit now. my role in the past 2-3 years has been really doing a lot of research and writing around the area of digital technology and the changes that have come about as a result of organizations using digital technology, but not just the technology itself, but the speed at which that technology is coming. So it's not just that you're doing things in a new way. It's not just that you're using new technologies. It's that innovation is happening so quickly that organizations, it's a very different way of leading organizations today than it was even just 10 years ago. And so, what I've been writing about is a lot of those changes and how those have happened. And I like to think that, whereas I've done a lot of the research and writing about this, Ken is the guy that's lived it all and is living it all. And we often sort of throw backwards and forwards some of the ideas. And actually, I don't believe we've ever really got too far from each other. And I agree with Ken 100%. The idea that you have an IT department sitting in the back and the business units are sitting in the front of the organization, that no longer is a valid model. There are still parts of IT which are back office. The big concern I have in organizations is that those back office components grow separated from the front office. And when that starts to happen, it's, where you have the technologists sitting in the back office managing technology, and you have the people managing the front office and getting business processes working with technology. And those two groups don't talk to each other. It's a major problem because the back office pieces are still really important, but they're managed a little bit differently. We have to figure out how to keep those linked and matched.
And David, even in today's world, if that back office technology is not giving the business what it wants, the business can still go and break away from the back office.
Yeah.
If I'm not liking, what you're doing centrally because it really is not supporting me, I will break away. So a simple example, one of the companies I work for now, my IT department is big on Teams, and I get it. I think Teams is a phenomenal product. But you can't run multiple teams on a single desktop at the moment. You have to go into web browsers. That doesn't work for me. So I use Zoom, and my IT department doesn't like it. And I say, I don't care. I want to use Zoom because Teams doesn't work for me in this instance. So I've broken away from the central back end IT department because it wasn't giving me what, and guess what? I could go and buy Zoom. So I'm the CEO, I should be supporting them, but they weren't supporting me. So you kind of go, I broke away from the back office. So even then, David, if the back office is still not close to what the business wants and is still not giving it what it wants, at the end of the day, the business can break away even then.
Yeah, sorry, Mark.
No, I was going to say, so really it's reflective of what's happening in wider society as well, is that people have so much more choice and availability of what they can use and what they can to satisfy their needs. They don't have to use a single option that was available to them originally. And I think the availability of various SaaS solutions, the old world, let's go way back. You still had to go and get, for example, discs and go and install it, or CDs and install it on your machine, or even further back. But now it's you can pretty much get a SaaS. Let's say you want a CRM product, you can go and sign up for it online with a credit card, and away you go. Your sales department suddenly is using a software tool that they may or may not have thought about integration into the rest of sales processes, marketing processes, etc. How do you foresee that changing in the coming years? Do you think that's going to accelerate? Do you think that IT organizations are going to or CIOs perhaps are going to say, well, yeah, we understand why you're doing that. Let's figure out how we can make this work with the rest of the technology stack that we have.
And that's the critical part of it, Mark, is as a CIO today, you need to be saying to yourself, what is my role? What is it that I am being asked to do? What is it that I'm not being asked to do is just as important. Okay, so your example now of a CRM, okay? If the marketing / customer facing people say, I want a CRM and I want whichever one they want, whether it be Microsoft Dynamics, Salesforce, HubSpot, and hopefully I've mentioned all the big ones and not left any out to embarrass them. Okay, if that's what they want, what value can I add? And if I can't add value, then let me just assist. Let me help them roll out whatever their choice is. Okay, let me help them with frameworks saying, guys, if we're going to put it in the cloud, here's a couple of pointers. If we're going to do this, here's a couple of security issues I need you to just focus on. If I can't add value to it, let it go. Don't try and control it. As I said, that chief marketing officer, chief customer success officer, whatever you want to call them, they know what they're doing. They know the technology they want. They know how they want to use it. They know the information they want to get out of it. They know how they want to link that to the social media marketing. Okay, let them run. I can't do a better job than them. Why should I intervene? Why should I try and control that? Let me understand in the background where I can add value, a couple of pointers, etc., etc. Make sure that overall I'm managing the costs, not managing the costs, but understanding the costs. So when somebody at board level says, what are you spending on IT? I can help them present that number. But if I can't add value, step back and assist. Don't try and take control. You will lose that fight.
So, Ken, what we're talking about now used to be called shadow IT, and It used to be a really bad thing. At least we thought so at the time. But now that seems to be the norm. I mean, is shadow IT still a bad thing? No.
In many ways, David, it's never been a bad thing. Why it was bad is because people did it undercover. And then people did it secretly. And so I'm not going to tell IT, let me just keep this quiet. I'm going to go run my own thing. Let me go and get a couple of Salesforce licenses and not tell, because IT said, I'm going to give you a CRM solution in 2 years because that's the quickest I can get to it. Okay. It was bad because it was secretive. That was why IT shadow was so bad. The concept's never been bad, isn't bad, and should be encouraged. Okay. It's not a bad thing to have shadow IT. I come back to CRM is a prime example where IT can add almost minimal value to rolling out a CRM solution. When they turn around and say, I want to integrate the data at the back end, gee, Whiskers, can I integrate this with this data? Sure, let me help you. Let me go and work on my data lakes, my data virtualization strategy. Let me help you pull the data together. Now I'm adding value that they can't do because either they don't have access to the other system or they don't know how to do it. I can help them do that. Actual value in CRM. As a CIO, minimal value that I can add. So shadow IT is not negative. In my opinion, it's totally positive, should be embraced by any decent CIO. And if you're going to fight it, you're going to be out of a job. You're not going to survive.
So how do we make sure that shadow IT, or whatever we call it, IT in the hands of business units who use it, how do we make sure that that's used well and effectively, and that we don't have people heading off in a direction they shouldn't be going in? I mean, we don't want to control, but at the same time, we also don't want it to be the Wild West. So how do we create that balance?
David, fascinating. I've been thinking about that exact topic when I was thinking about this conference. And it's like raising a child, okay? You got to teach your child the basics and hopefully you've done a good job. And then when you let them free, okay, you got to hope that they come back to that moral background and they're not going to misbehave, okay? And you and I have both got grown-up kids, so you and I know what we're talking about. It's exactly the same. You've got to say to the business, I want to let you loose, but can I give you a few guidelines? Can I tell you what to be careful of? Can I tell you what I need you to do for me? Can I tell you, I've got 2 daughters, and it was go out, have a party, be great. Phone me when you get there, phone me when you leave, and tell me if you've been drinking, okay? I didn't set rules on curfews and timescales and where they could go, where they couldn't go, but I gave them boundaries into which they could work. Give the business the boundaries. These are the boundaries I'd like you to work within. These are the values that I'd like you to work with, okay? And I'm here to help you. It's guiding, it's assisting, it's helping them along the road. They need help. Let's not kid ourselves, okay? Even the marketing guy that wants CRM still needs help, okay? But I want help. I'm not seeking dictatorship.
We did, in preparation for this, we did a bit of a poll. And I asked, and so I asked, what is the role of IT? Interestingly, 50% of the respondees said the role of IT is to set policy and provide guidance. Another significant group said IT should still have a department in which they're providing shared services, things like networking services and office automation or whatever the case is, those sort of centralized corporate kind of services. We had a few people, I think 8% it was, that said there should no longer be an IT department. That should all be brought into the business unit. What was interesting to me is just how, and then there were a number of other comments with people talking about sort of something in between those. It's very interesting to me that not one of the people who responded said, you should continue to have an IT department that is a service provider to the rest of the business. Apart from shared services. But the role of IT is very much more one of advisory, one of enabling, rather than one of control. So I thought that was very interesting. So if I had a question about you, if you're a CIO or a CEO for that matter, and you start seeing these kind of patterns happening in the organization, practically, how do you go about managing this? Let's start with CIO. If you're the CIO and you have these groups of businesses going out and buying cloud services, or creating multifunctional development teams and agile groups and product management teams, what are the steps that you take as a CIO to manage that?
I'm not sure I've understood the question 100%. So let me answer what I think you've asked me, and then say, no, here's not what I asked you. So let me tell you what I, as a CEO, want my CIO to do. And let me tell you, if I was a CIO, what I would offer to do. Okay, I would define what those shared services, basic services are. And I would get approval from my business. Guys, do you want me to offer you network services? Do you want me to offer you cybersecurity services? Do you want me to offer data sharing services? Okay, because nobody's going to do that in any line of business. Okay, do you want me? I would define what I think I should be offering as a service. You call it back office. Okay, I think back office is wrong terminology, but that's neither here nor there. What is it you want me to offering you as a service? Okay, I also think a consulting service is very important. Okay, I then think my job as a CIO is to be advising all of the heads of lines of business what's happening in the technology world, what I think is new that could help them advance their agenda. And I should be advising the CEO, hey, this is happening. Hey, be careful of cybersecurity. Have you thought about, and it's horrible to say, and it's terrible what's going on, have you thought about potential impacts of what's happening in Ukraine on our business down the road? Is there anything we can help from a technology perspective? If you thought of this, can I do this? I found something, can I share it with you? I need to be helping the CEO, who should be called, only 2 days ago, I heard the CEO should be called the CVO, the Chief Visionary Officer. I think it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, okay? That's what the CEO's job is. I should be helping him with those visions. I should be helping him extend the thinking of his visions by coming up with ideas, coming up saying, here's a technology I think that's exciting, it may help, manufacturing. Can we go and talk to them about it? So to me, that's what I'm looking for. And when I say consulting, Dave, you've just raised the dreaded word cloud, right? Okay. If I am the chief marketing officer and I go and I want to buy, bad example, I want to buy HubSpot. And the supplier says to me, what cloud do you want to run it on? Now I'm out my depth. Okay. Now I'm not quite sure what to do. IT, can you consult to me and advise me? Okay, because that's something they don't know. I'm not stopping them making the HubSpot decision. I'm just helping them choose what cloud provider to use, whether that be Azure or Google or AWS or whatever you want to do. Now I'm consulting and adding value to their decision. Okay, because sometimes they will say, oh, I don't know about that one. Okay, IT, can you help? So certainly the basic services, I need to get agreement and provide the best I can. Okay. I need to be helping the CEO and the execs with their vision, by giving them exciting new technology that I think can add value to their business. And then I need to be a consulting service and helping them on the decisions that they may not be able to make themselves. That's what I would do as a CIO today. And as a CEO, that's what my IT team to be doing for me. Help me with vision, help me with my lines of business, get them to speed their vision up, make their vision more exciting, make their vision more into where we know the world's going to go.
So a number of organizations, going back a few years, started putting business leaders into IT leadership roles. What do you think of that idea?
I don't have a problem with it. Okay, I think it was done because business felt IT wasn't delivering. They said we need a business guy there because at least they know what I'm expecting. So I think you're going back to the 2000s, Dave, late 90s, 2000s. And I worked for a company. I worked for a bank. They took a guy who was head of corporate banking and put him in charge of IT. Why? Because IT had, its head stuck in the sand. You thought I was going to say something else. Its head stuck in the sand and weren't listening. You go in and run it. They took a head, an executive of corporate banking, and put him in charge of IT. Limited success, by the way. Limited success. Okay, I think they chose the wrong individual, but that's a separate discussion altogether. But I think the reason they were doing that was different. I'm not sure I would do that today. It's not a bad decision, but why they were doing it is not a problem today.
Right.
Personal opinion.
So now it's more that IT professionals are moving in the opposite direction, becoming embedded in the business units and providing. I find that very interesting that it's kind of swung back the other way.
Yeah.
Well, is that not a factor of technology being the business in many instances? So if you don't start off as a technology company that happens to deliver business services or business outcomes, you will quickly become that.
I think unless you're a technology company, your point, Mark. If I'm a retail, technology is not the business. Hell, it's seriously important. Okay, but if I don't have the product that somebody wants to buy, I'm still going to die. But do I need to offer that product via all the different channels and all the different areas and deliver it within 24 hours? You bet. And the size and color that I want. Okay, you bet. Now that's where technology plays a role. Different channels. Inventory, stock, warehouse. Dave lives in the States, so he's aware of it. But if I order something from Amazon in the morning where I live, it's delivered by 5 o'clock. Okay, those are systems in the back doing that, right? That's not I got lucky. Those are systems managing buying patterns, etc., etc. So you can't deliver that business without the use of technology. But if Amazon didn't have the product and didn't have the cars and didn't have, it's irrelevant anyway. So you're right. Technology isn't the business, but without the technology, the business cannot achieve what it wants to achieve.
I know you've got quite a few stories, and maybe you can share those. But I attended an event a few months back, and on that event there were a number of CIOs, and the theme of the event was digital experience and the individual. And the 5 CIOs were asked to talk about their digital technology and how they were using it in their organizations. 4 of them said pretty much the same thing. We have, the biggest need that we have is getting data to people. So we have these projects defining how we're going to get data to people. And the 5th CIO stood up and said, yeah, I do need data, but let me tell you what my biggest problem is. I work for an ice company, ice manufacturer. What I focus on day in and day out is how much ice is getting into fridges, into freezers, and what the stock level is on those freezers, so I can reroute trucks to the right freezer at the right time. And that struck me. And another one, we were chatting to chief legal counsel in a fisheries company in Chile, and they were doing enterprise service management, and the legal office decided they were going to use service management to manage their side. And I asked him the question, I said, so what service did you start with? And I expected him to answer something like, well, contract negotiations, something along those lines. He says to me, no, the service we started with was transporting fish to the sea from the farms. It's like, so that whole there's a shift in an IT person saying I manage the technology to now saying I manage what the business. I know you've got some stories as well.
No, Dave. The point you're trying to make in slightly different words, because you're 100% correct, is I'm looking at the problem from a business perspective. I'm not looking at it from a technology perspective. Okay, I'm not, putting in a system so that you can manage moving fish from A to Z. I'm looking at, you want to move fish from A to Z in the following way. Good. You're stating the problem in business terminology. Okay, you're not stating it in technology terms. That's absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. And I want to come back just to a couple of minutes ago. Sorry, just to come back to a point when you talk about IT people moving into the business. I'm not going to put an advert on here, so don't get worried, Mark. I run a company that does IT costs and et cetera, et cetera. That's a financial function run by financial people. Okay, that's not programmers, that's not developers. So once again, the skill set that IT needs to look at to support is different. Okay, developers are not going to die. Okay, but I'm buying more off-the-shelf stuff, I'm buying more availability stuff, and I'm putting it in the hands of the business to run. It's interesting. So IT people are moving into the business, but they're not necessarily playing a true IT role.
Yeah, but I think it's a key point there, and I don't think it's too much of a plug at all, because it's actually quite relevant. Why does IT financial management matter? Because the business wants to understand what it is that they're spending it on, what are they getting for it, and how can they change or influence what that cost is, i.e. what are the levers that I'm going to pull to change it. And I think that also comes into play around cloud as well, because you touched on earlier, can we consult the business to select the right cloud provider, but also once it's in, how can we enable the business to use cloud appropriately so that they don't end up with a huge overcharge. I was talking to a friend of mine, I'm not sure if he's actually on, but I was talking to a friend of mine who is a specialist in cloud financial management. And through him providing reports that said, hang on, look at what we're getting charged over Christmas in our non-production environment. Look at what we're getting charged over New Year's in our non-production environment, and weekends, and through that appropriate, looking at that charge and saying, surely we don't have developers working over the weekend, right, or Christmas. They were actually able to make a significant savings by then applying controls that said, you know what, we're going to apply an automatic shutdown, right? Unless you have an exception, because these are the standard, core working hours. And they've achieved a significant saving. This is for a global bank. So, it moves beyond just, are you selecting the right thing, but into the realm of, are you managing it correctly? Are you managing it in a way that is optimal? And that's where I think that advisory is so important to the business as they're beginning to use more and more technology.
100%, Mark. Okay, and it comes back to, it's one of those guidelines, frameworks, policies, whatever terminology you want to put around it, these guys. And this is where the CEO should be also setting some rules or guidelines. He should be saying, guys, at the end of the day, I still have to say what technology is costing me. Okay, so IT is going to give you some guidelines, okay, as to what tools they're going to give you to manage your costs, which I can consolidate at the end of the day and say to my board, IT is costing me 3% of revenue, 7% of revenue, because I want to be within those guidelines, which are available in the marketplace. Okay, if I'm running a retail store, I'm going to be 6% of revenue. I'm running a mine, I want to be 2.5% of revenue, my IT cost. Running a bank, it could be 20% of revenue might be my IT cost. But I need to still have that. I need to answer my board. And then IT needs to also then be saying, these are the tools you've got to use. I'm not controlling your budget. I'm giving you tools to manage your spend and your IT costs. And if you come back to it, for non-finance people, IT people have had no choice but to understand what they spend their money on, because they're always under threat. What are you spending money on? Why are you spending so much? They've had to understand their costs. The business has never had that pressure, which is why when you have the tools to do it, they went, ooh, sorry, I was running that system 2 years ago. I forgot to switch it off. Okay. So that IT discipline, which is from IT, not finance, right? Okay. Finance is supposed to have that discipline, but don't usually have that because they don't understand that the consequences of, oh, I'm not going to use that system anymore. Did you remember to switch it off and not pay your $250 a month on your credit card? So once again, that's where IT can advise, guide, set some guidelines and some frameworks in place. And so that you're helping business manage their costs. You're not controlling the budget. You're giving them tools to manage it. That's all. Don't ask me to control their budget. I'll get thrown out. It's just not right.
Which makes it so much more of a different conversation. Instead of going to the business and saying, we need budget for this, how much can we get for that? Whereas if you turn around and say, actually, here is the value that we as a business are delivering. Here's our P&L. Technology is a part of that, and our products that we're managing are part of that in terms of how we manage that. And we need to manage all of this holistically as a P&L, as a value stream, including the technology. That's a very different conversation to have with a business person that says this is driving profitability or this is driving cost savings. And this is how the technology is enabling that.
100% agree.
Rather than saying we need more money for networks, we need more money for storage.
Yeah, 100% agree. David, you were going to say something?
Well, I have a, and I see Dylan has a question. Before we ask Dylan's question, I had something a little bit earlier. You spoke about IT having to monitor emerging technology and advise the business, and that's not. A lot of IT people find that very difficult because for us that means, oh, artificial intelligence. That means I have to know everything about artificial intelligence. I have to create an artificial intelligence strategy for the organization. That is an impossible task. But I remember you telling a story about RoboDog. And to me, that really summed up the whole idea of how an IT or how a CIO goes about advising the business about emerging technology. I'm not sure if you can share that story, but late now if you can't.
I can share that story. And it comes back to, as a CEO now, I want my CIO coming to me with visionary ideas, or I'm going to throw him or her a problem. Okay, I'm going to say, can you fix this for me? And that's the example you're giving. So I was working for the South African Revenue at the time, Revenue Services at the time. And part of South African Revenue Services had customs as part of its portfolio. And the then Minister of Finance, who was the most marvelous gentleman, there was a drugs routing problem, routing for non-Americans, routing problem through Johannesburg, where, coming in from South America and being distributed into Europe. And we were talking, and I kind of like switched off the conversation. He was talking to the head of customs. And I suddenly got this, Ken, surely there's an IT solution to this problem. Now think about it. This is suitcases in an airport, with drugs in it. What do you mean there's an IT solution to this problem? Yeah, don't talk about that scanning, That's not the answer. And we did some homework, and we found in the UK customs at that stage, I'm going back 20 years, UK customs at that stage had invented a robotic dog that would climb over the suitcases, so it was like a thing, and had a sensor that could sniff drugs in a suitcase and would stop and flash its light at the top, And I went back to the minister and I said, I found the solution. We've got this, and he called it RoboDog. RoboDog. I like that solution. Now, the point I think you're trying to make is business has a problem, almost nothing to do with technology. You go, what do you mean I'm going to sniff cocaine? You want me to go and sniff it myself? No, we actually found a technology solution by thinking and being creative. That's what the CIOs need to be doing, is going, gee whiskers, I don't think there's a technology out there, but is there? I don't know. You'd be surprised what's out there. And so that's the example, Dave. And that's what the CIO of the future needs to be doing. A lot more thinking, a lot more adding value to the business, not being in control.
So Dylan had a question. I can't, Mark, I don't know if you have it.
I can see it, yeah. So Dylan's question is, do you see cloud services taking over on-premise infrastructure as an ICT enabler of business in the next 5 years? it seems the ROI is higher from current projections. What are your thoughts?
Yes and no. Do I see cloud as the predominant infrastructure, for want of a better platform for use of the technologies? Yes, it will be the predominant player. There's no doubt about that. The world is moving that way. That does not mean there's not a place for on-prem. There will be a place for on-prem. It can vary depending on the type of business that you're running, to the type of individual that's running the company. You know, I'm not going to, for obvious reason, mention any company's names, but I'm consulting to an organization at the moment whose CEO is adamant that he hates the cloud. It is not secure. He has sensitive information, which he does, just not belittle that, and therefore he will never move to the cloud. I only want on-prem solutions. Okay. Now, who am I to question that judgment? Okay. And I say to you, look, I would use the cloud if I was your CIO, and I would recommend it. But if that's what you truly believe and truly want, there are solutions out there for you. So the answer to the question is, do I see cloud being the predominant player? Yeah, 80, 90%. I don't know what the number is. It's going to be in the high percentage. There's still a role for on-prem, either due to personality types, type of business, security issues, etc., etc. So there will be on-prem solutions. They're not going away forever. But cloud, I think, is most probably already the most predominant platform that people use. Dave, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there are certainly some situations where you do not want to move into cloud, and those really have to do with things that are not very commoditized.
Yeah.
So they have to do with really specialized systems that require specialized knowledge, that perform potentially a specialized function within your organization. But anything that we do that is kind of commoditized, office automation, storage, platforms for development and testing, certainly in the cloud, it has become so well managed and so cost effective that it makes sense to do it in the cloud rather than to try and do it on-prem. Yeah.
But Dave, if we look at the CIO's ambit of what they get involved in, I already was starting to get involved in areas outside of traditional, the PLC systems in a manufacturing plant, in a paper mill, etc., etc. They are using traditional IT equipment, so starting to get involved in that. That's where sometimes you're going to have on-prem. Okay, if you're running a paper mill 24/7 and it's in the cloud, and somebody breaks the cable, that plant's going to close down. I think you may want your PLC solutions, at least the core of it, to be on-prem. So once again, there's another example of where some stuff will be on-prem, potentially with cloud backup, potentially with a cloud fallover, but sometimes you're going to have on-prem. The business dictates itself to on-prem. So hopefully, Dylan, kind of, predominantly cloud, but there's still going to be a fair amount of on-prem.
But then so Dylan says, thanks. Where do you see the role of the, maybe let me ask this a bit more contentiously, do you think there is a future role for what we've traditionally called the CIO? I mean, now we see roles coming up as CIDO, CDO. Where do you see that going as organizations are becoming more digitized? So in your example of PLCs, we start to bring into a digital strategy. We'll talk about IoT. You'll talk about, all of that being part of the digital strategy. So where does that go from here? Where do you think organizations are going to be in? Things are moving too fast to say 10 years, but where do you think things will be in the next 3 to 5 years?
25 years. Gee, whiskers. Marc,
3 to 5 years, not 25. 3 to 5 years.
On a serious note, I believe anybody that's thinking past 3 years is dreaming. There's too much change happening in the world.
Yeah. Okay? So 3 years time, where are we going to be?
Nobody can put a 5-year strategy together, because I promise you it's a waste of time. So 3 years maximum, most probably even closer to 2. I think, I've never, although I've been called a CIO, I've never understood why I was called the Chief Information Officer. What was that supposed to mean? Was I in charge of the information? No, the business owns the data. Well, what's this Chief Information stuff? So ignore that kind of like curveball. Come back to me as a CEO, and I have a CIO what do I want them to do? I want them to tell me what they believe they should be in control of from a shared services point of view. Tell me what you want. Cybersecurity, network, connectivity from home. Okay, massive issue. What are the rules from connectivity from home? And I don't think a business cares. That's not something you want to add value on. But Mr. Head of IT, you can give me guidelines, and you should have those shared services and the frameworks. Please give me the guidelines on how people shadow IT, the business can implement its own IT and run with it. Please tell me how I need to manage my data at the back end so I can access all my internal data, external data to get the best dashboards and decision making out of the data. Okay. And then please be a visionary for each of the lines of business and for me. That's the role as I would describe it today. And if I was asked to be a CIO today, that's how I would want to see my role defined. And that's where I believe I can add the most value. Maybe one of the people on the call can come up with a title for that role. It's certainly not Chief Information Officer. So is there a role for somebody to be partially in charge of technology, direction, some shared services? Yes. You're not going to be in control of everything. And the word CIO doesn't fit.
So that brings me into another question, perhaps. Where do you think responsibility lies in determining a digital strategy and direction for a
Marc,
business?
With a couple of minutes to go, you opening up a scary topic.
Okay, what's your short answer? And we can always.
You're a youngster, right? Okay. So when banks in the 1970s and 1980s introduced ATMs, what would you call that? I'd call it digital transformation.
True, yeah.
It's not new. Digital transformation is not new. The introduction of ATMs was digital transformation. And Dave knows this. I've always had a problem with the use of the word digital transformation. IT departments and businesses had been using technology to transform their business a long time. We've added the word digital just to confuse people and get more money. Okay, so sarcastic use.
Seems to have worked for some.
So now, if we say digital because it's now becoming more online, more social, more instant, then I'm happy with the use of the word digital. But transformation has been happening for decades. It is not new. It's speeding up. It's happening at a faster pace than it's ever happened before, and it's going to speed up even more. I see the life cycle of a serious application being 2 years before you throw it out and put another one in. Okay, so you've got to get used to quick replace, rip and replace, throw it out, put a new one in. Don't become loyal to it. Don't become beholden to it. Just if you find a better solution out there that's going to add more value to your business, who cares? Throw it out. ROI, you spoke about ROI, which is why I love software as a service. Okay, I don't like it next month, I can throw it out. I don't have to pay for it. I'll pay for something else. That's where we need to be going, because the world is moving so fast from a technology point of view. You can't keep pace, but you want to be able to switch, swap, change, upgrade, move to something else at a moment's notice. If that's what you mean by digital transformation, then yeah.
So as a CEO, then, how has this changed the role of the CEO? What are the things that you have to focus on now that you did not have to focus on 20 years ago or 10 years ago?
Making sure my business is one step ahead, and your opportunity time from a new idea in the past could have been between 1 and 2 years. It's now potentially between 1 week and 4 weeks. How do I keep ahead? Okay, how do I keep ahead of my competition? How, if somebody introduces a new product today, whether that be in insurance, in medical, if somebody do that, somebody can copy me very, very quickly. Okay, how do I keep ahead of the game? How do I keep one step ahead, keep doing what I need to do? How do I keep improving my service? Why? And we could talk all day about whether Bezos is a nice guy or not. Okay, it's actually an irrelevant argument. Why does Amazon keep ahead? Because they change on a constant basis. I can't keep pace with what Amazon is anymore. I still get incredibly speedy service, convenient service, I don't think it's the best price. Okay, if I shop around, I'll always get a better price. Does that stop me from using Amazon? Mm-mm. But look how they change their model every day. Look how they change what they do and how they do it. Just scary. Keeping one step ahead of everybody else. Why is nobody? You've seen the little bit players, and they all die. Why? Okay. Why do they die? Amazon's trying to keep one. So my job as a CEO is get that leading position and stay there. I call you a chief visionary officer, not a CEO. CEO title, chief executive officer. What does it mean? It's easy in hindsight. Okay, it's like chief information officer. I loved it when I was one, but now I look back and I go, what did it mean? Chief executive officer. What does it mean? And by the way, that's not my idea. I repeat, I saw something on LinkedIn 48 hours ago, and it just was the most magnificent leading into this. So I need to give credit to whoever it was I saw on LinkedIn. I'm not stealing the ideas.
Well, pause in the conversation here. I think you've you've kind of touched on a number of big things here. If we go any further on any of them, we're going to spend another hour. But I would like to come back to one thing. So for all of the IT people that are on this call, and not all of them are CIOs, they're working in different parts of IT. What is your career advice for somebody in IT today to build their career over the next 3 to 5 years? 3 years, since we can't project into 5 years.
Okay, so remembering, David, there's multiple career paths. Okay,
right.
And once again, I think some of the learnings I had from IBM when I was a youngster just absolutely phenomenal. There are a whole bunch of IBMers who wanted to be technically focused. That was their life. Don't ask me to be a manager. Don't ask me to get involved in the business. I want to be a techie. I want to understand how all of this stuff works in the background, and I will be a good techie and help you do techie stuff. Okay. If you want a technical career path, there is one for you. Okay. There is a phenomenal technical career path because the technology is changing. Now, I think there will be less and less in a client environment and more in a supplier world. But there is a huge role for a technical guy that wants to, guy or girl, that just wants to focus on the technology, whether that's coding, decoding, writing, JavaScript. So there's always going to be a role for that true techie. So don't be scared. That's not going anywhere. If you want to move into management, okay, move from a techie to a technical management role, go into it with an open mind. Go into it understanding that you are moving into a business role. You may be business focused on technology, but you're there for the business. Same as a finance manager moves into manager. I understand finance, but they also better put a business hat on and understand that finance is not just about a balance sheet. It's about interpreting that balance sheet, saying what's happening on the balance sheet. What messages do I need to send you? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? It's not just putting the balance, that role doesn't exist. So remember, as a manager, your job is to understand the business more generically and be adding value. If you want to be a CIO, understand it is a strategic role, which needs to be visionary, and you will be helping the executive leadership team control shadow IT, for want of a better word, and help them run those environments productively, cost effectively, and help them keep pace with change. Great career roles, okay? But if you want to be a control freak, not going to be around for very long. You want to control IT and you want to tell the business what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, and it's not, Dave, you and I both know that's not predominant anymore. It used to be predominant 70s, 80s, 90s. That's not a predominant IT guy. But if you are that kind of IT role, and if there's any on the call, not the right way to go about it.
Great. Marc, you're looking like you're thinking that you want to say something.
He's still thinking about whether ATMs was digital transformation.
Still stuck there.
What's interesting about that discussion, though, just to go back to that, is the money that came out of the ATMs was still physical. And I think that's something that a lot of IT people sometimes forget, is that at the end of the chain somewhere, a physical service is being provided. And if you cannot link your job to that physical activity or service, you're going to find it very difficult to prove the value that you have to the organization. And so sorry, that just a little bit of a tangent over there.
Yeah.
But well, we'll see if that changes with metaverse. But yeah, you know, you're right. I mean, at the moment, I'm consulting to a university, and exactly the same thing. You know, at the end of the day, there's still a student who is getting an outcome from that, whether it's tangible or intangible. They're getting learning, and they're getting learning in multiple different ways that they did before the pandemic. I hoped we wouldn't mention pandemic, but now I've brought it up. But you know, before to now, the last 2 years, now they're getting a much more blended learning than they did before. And in fact, they're actually demanding that says. They're now demanding and saying, you know what, actually there were some good things that came out of recorded lectures about being able to go back and look at those online recordings of lectures, of digital notes and so forth, that they now want to bring into and combine with the physical world. And so it's
Marc, your example of the pandemic is brilliant. Okay, this is so let me give you a real example, and Dave knows who I'm talking about. My son-in-law is the ITSM service director for a large listed American company. Okay, pandemic hit. Do you think his role changed? It was a predominantly desktop-based, office-bound organization. Okay, in the services industry. Do you think his role changed? Absolutely. What did the CEO do? Went to the CIO, who went to the ITSM services director and said, what do I do to make my workforce remote? Consulting service. Let me give you some guidelines. Let me give you some understandings. Let me put a strategy together. Okay. CEO, I need help. Put it. And by the way, it wasn't what happens to my technology. It's how do I make my workforce mobile from all being in the office? And everybody had the same problem. But he sought guidance, he sought consulting, and the CIO came up with the vision with the ITSM services director to execute. Great example of a CEO saying, I need consulting. Okay? And the CIO responding, and then putting their shared services in the background. Okay. Now suddenly, okay, they were buying the laptops, which they never did before. Business used to buy their own laptops. Now suddenly it was you now will be central procurement because they needed to source, because getting laptops was a problem. Needed to source and distribute. Business didn't have to do that. Okay? Fascinating story. But we've learned a lot from the pandemic. I was only talking. I've got a visitor here at the moment from overseas. He's coming. We've got a strategy session for 2 days, tomorrow and Friday. And he was saying to me, but loving to be back on prem. And I said, yeah, I get that, but you understand it's not permanent. There's going to be a hybrid. There are people that are going to want to come in and leave them. So you need, as a manager, to adjust your style to manage both. Okay, it's not one or the other anymore. It is both. And people need to understand that. People are going to work remotely. They're also going to come in to work and have face-to-face. What's the percentage? I don't know what that's going to work out to be. It's been 100-0, right? Now it's starting to be maybe 25-75 in the favor of money on site, 25%. Will it get to 50-50? Will it get 70-30? Will it go back to 25-75? I don't know. That's going to be interesting to find out. But it's never going back to normal. Never going back to only working on in an office. I ain't going to do that.
So I think we're kind of coming up to the full hour. I mean, firstly, to those who asked online, are there any questions that people would like to get in quickly before we wrap things up? If you do, then please either raise hand, I'll unmute you, or pop your chat into the chat window, your question to the chat window. While we're waiting to see if any of that happens, I mean, David, from your perspective, any concluding thoughts on today's conversation, which has covered many interesting topics that we could probably...
For me, just thank you, Ken. I always get so much out of talking to you. But for me, it's just like the world has changed. It will never be the same again. And I think those of us in a traditional IT career, it's a very exciting time. And I just really happy to hear Ken's career advice. I think it's spot on. Become a business person. with the technology specialization. But Ken, thank you very much. Really appreciate it, you being on here. There was a question from Dylan. Dylan asked about blockchain.
What was the question?
Is there a future in blockchain? What is the future of blockchain?
Dylan, I would really love to get into a conversation, but you're asking the wrong guy. This is not an area of expertise where I feel comfortable other than telling you how to spell it. So I'm going to pass on that question. Ask me again in 6 months, because I've just kicked off a blockchain initiative in one of the companies I'm running, because I think as a company, as a technology, we need to be involved. So I've hired somebody to work for me for 6 months to put a blockchain strategy together. Let's recaucus in 6 months and I'll give you an intelligent answer. Right now, you get a very unintelligent answer.
Right, there we go. Webinar for, what are we now, March, September, we'll talk about blockchain.
then I'll be the expert on blockchain. Right now, I can spell it. That's about as far as it goes. But just final words from me, Mark, if I may, before handing over to you.
Please,
to close.
thank you.
Don't be scared of the future. If you're in IT, you're a CIO, you're in IT, don't be scared. This is exciting. This is embrace the future, embrace the challenge, embrace IT splitting out into the business and business, managing it themselves. This is exciting. This is not scary for me. I think it's exciting times. And I'm not saying that just because that's what we're talking about. I can't imagine going back to the old IT days of sitting in the basement, locked doors, throwing a spec over once every 12 months and going out once a quarter to the business to give them an update. I can't think of anything scarier. It'd be horrible. This is the time where you can go and get involved in the business, see what they're doing, add value to the business. No, this is exciting time.
Thank you so much, Ken. Really appreciate your time in joining us today, and thank you to everyone who joined as a guest. Thank you again to David as well for joining the session today. I hope everyone, I hope my fellow hosts found this an enjoyable experience. We certainly,
as you can see, David and I never enjoy a good conversation.
Oh, well, exactly. For those of you who are interested in taking the conversation further, you will see on your screen right now the contact details for David, Ken, and myself, our LinkedIn, and of course our website, syneXeos.com. You will also find a recording of this in a few days' time, possibly sometime next week. Will be up on the website. So thank you very much to everyone for joining. I appreciate your time, and thank you again to Ken and David.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, David. Thanks, everybody.
You.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Cheers. Bye-bye.